Hi, I'm Koy Wentz.
Hello, I'm Emma Bonser.
This is going to be our psychology podcast for our final exam. We're going to be discussing attachment theories and how they affect relationships, current and later in life.
Yes.
I'm going to start off by explaining the attachment theory and what an attachment style is. So the attachment theory is the idea that children are biologically predisposed to develop attachments to caregivers as the result of genetics. This theory is evolutionary based, and it also states that infants are predisposed to be with caregivers during their critical period. Now, I mentioned critical period. Critical period and sensitive periods are a little different in that sensitive periods are, kind of like a general term. There's actually an article on this where it says bonding was a concept developed by Klaus and Kennel, who implied that parent-child bonding depended on skin-to-skin contact during early critical period. So that was an early critical period. So a sensitive period is one during which experience exerts its efforts during a limited time. However, when an experience is essential and alters performance permanently, then such a period is called a critical one. So a critical period is a specific period during development in which almost like a goal must be met.
Yes.
And going back to the attachment theory and attachment style, the attachment styles were kind of discovered by Mary Ainsworth in her strange situation experiment. And in a strange situation experiment, this was an experiment in which a child observed on four aspects. It was observed on four aspects. And this was play behavior, reaction to departure, reaction to return, and behavior when a stranger is around. And like I said, that was conducted by Mary Ainsworth. And this leads into the next thing of the role of basic trust. So basic trust is that basic help and idea of coping with that caregiver. So you're able to have a good relationship with that caregiver, and it's the fact that the world around you is predictable and trustworthy. And it's said to be formed during infancy, during that critical period and sensitive period. And Erik Erikson was a dominant founder of basic trust. And this largely is going to depend on the parental reactions, which we're going to discuss later, the parenting styles. And then the first type of attachment style is going to be secure attachment. So in a secure attachment, when the parent left, the child would become upset. Whereas where the parent returned, the child would cling to them. So they would want them back.
Yes, the child would be consoled, but then they returned to playing when the mother came back because they were like, oh, I'm fine now, I'm all here.
Exactly. And so this is 70% of attachment styles. So mothers who noticed that what their babies were doing and responded appropriately were qualities that a mother would have. And secure attachment styles lead to infants, or I should say, adults later in life, that are trusting and can be in lasting relationships. And then I think that's really, relative to today when we see people out there on the streets, for example, that we can expect them to have almost a secure attachment relationship. They honestly tend to be a little bit well-behaved, and you can tell that the relationship is more cohesive.
Yes, more trusting, more open, more ready to talk about things, more approachable almost. Yeah. And it's also important to mention secure attachment. This is the only secure type. So all the other ones we're going to mention are the insecure types. Which, if you'd like to
continue. Yeah, absolutely. So next one is going to be avoidant attachment. So the main trait in this is going to be indifference. So this is extreme independence, the idea that I need to do this myself because I don't have that parent to rely on. And with avoidant attachment, when the caregiver leaves the baby acts indifferent. However, when the caregiver returns, the baby also remains indifferent. So there's really not that that relationship with the parent. I mean, you could tell both of this answers that were indifferent, right? So they may see contact, then pull away, but there really isn't much there, and that's only 15%. So that's not a lot, but it's also a decent amount. I mean, it's not too much, not too little. And mothers who are in an avoidant attachment relationship, they felt like they were doing good, they only felt like they were doing good, but they didn't do good enough. So what they were doing is that they were tending to their baby, but they ignored them at other times. So
yes, only when their needs were met.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then, going back to what we talked about with secure attachment, I think that's also relative. In society, when we see people who may not be in the best relationship with their parents, they really don't know how to react, right?
Yes. And it's kind of, I'm not sure if you mentioned this yet, but it's kind of that aspect of it could be looked at as extreme independence. I can't rely on anyone else to do this. I need to do this myself, and that's because as an infant you couldn't like rely on your parents to like meet your needs for you.
Exactly. So the next one is actually going to be anxious ambivalent attachment, and this one's a little unique in the fact that when the caregiver leaves, the baby becomes distressed, but when the caregiver returns, the baby is resentful of the caregiver. So, I think that's definitely an odd topic to wrap our heads around, just because how can the baby be, upset when the mother leaves, or, the caregiver in that situation, but then be resentful? So, indifference is definitely another trait in that, and extreme independence as well, but this is also 15%, so it's not a lot there. And mothers who are in an anxious ambivalent relationship included mothers, or relationship with their child, attachment style, included mothers who, looked over their child and only engaged with their child after their needs were met. And, just like we did with the previous two, I'd say in society, sometimes you could see parents out there who take on their own goals before they take on their child's, and definitely I'm sure that would relate to, very unfortunate, quite frankly unfortunate relationship styles in the future.
You got it.
Yep. So, all right, so that was, anxious ambivalent attachment. The next one is disorganized attachment. This was not an original one with the other three, and this was discovered in 1990 by Mary Main. So in disorganized attachment, when the caregiver left, the baby would become, angry and would rock, hit, and cry. And then when the caregiver returned, the baby would act strangely and would not know how to attach. So this happens if a child doesn't form any attachment at all. So disorganized attachment really is another unique attachment in the fact that the baby becomes aggressive. And I almost think that can be contributed to maybe like the sensitive period. During that sensitive period, perhaps the parent wasn't really there. I know that relates to parenting styles, so I know we have some parenting styles to share with everybody.
Yes, okay, so now we're going to merge into parenting styles. So first type that I want to discuss is authoritarian. This is the parent that is very strict, do as I say, expects complete obedience from their child, and oftentimes they're prone to yelling and ordering their child around. So because I said so, that's why. That's something that you'd oftentimes hear from a parent who has a more authoritarian style. There's no room for discussion. It's do what I say, don't ask questions. And you just don't have that like explanation of the rule, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I don't think this is fair. I don't care. Like, you have to do what I say because I'm the parent.
Yeah.
And this often leads to children who have lower self-esteem. They tend to react poorly when they mess up, like, I can't do it. And because their parent was always telling them, like, no, you can't do that, like, and pretty much always down on them. Authoritarian parenting styles also, like, tend to breed children with, like, less social skills, so.
Yeah, I think with authoritarian social styles, we can think about those individuals who maybe go to new experiences, right? Like, if you expect somebody to have an authoritarian parenting style, like, that just got a new employment, they may expect, like, rigid rules. They might, like, if there's no rules there at the employment, perhaps there isn't, they may be surprised by that, and the fact that they are expecting you to tell them what to do, because they have been their whole life, they have had that, that really obedience and that set rules.
Yes. Okay, so now, getting away from that, the next parenting style is permissive. This is the parent who asks very little of their children, low expectations, often has too few rules with insufficient consequences if they're broken. So there's like no follow through with rules. Like, oh, I want you home by 11 o'clock at night. If you show up at 12, it's like, oh, it's okay, it's fine, you're not in trouble. So, and then that's really bad for like discipline for a child, because it's like, oh, like, you have this rule, oh, no, it's fine, like, doesn't matter. So that's kind of like the parent who kind of like lets their kid do whatever they want, people may say. Oftentimes a permissive parent will try to be their child's friend rather than like lay down those like rules and like be an actual parent. So, and these lack of rules and discipline can lead to immaturity, and increased aggression and behavior problems. So like those children who like, especially perhaps in school, you'll see like kids who like are just repeatedly in trouble and like just don't respond well to any type of discipline or authority. That may be as a result of a permissive parent.
Yeah, it's almost an exact opposite of authoritarian in that you can see that these people don't have the set of rules like we did discuss with the authoritarian.
Yes, and so now, perfectly in the middle of this is authoritative parenting. Researchers say this is the optimal parenting style because it leads to children with the best outcomes, both socially, intellectually, etc. Children who are raised with an authoritative parent tend to have better self-esteem and social skills and become more self-reliant in the long run. This is the parent that is firm but fair, one may say. So you have rules and like you're expected to follow them and they're strictly kept, but also there's room for like discussion, and it's like the rules are always fair and always explained to the child. So as per the textbook, authoritative parents are both demanding and responsive. So that pretty much means like the parent cares and like wants to make sure that all their child's needs are met, but at the same time has those healthy boundaries and makes sure that the kid is doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best style you can expect, because I don't want to say they're normal, but they don't have that they don't have that set of rules, and they also don't have no rules. So
yeah,
I always think it's like the perfect, in my opinion, I think that is the perfect parenting style.
Yes, that is, yes. And then this was not one that we talked about in lecture and class, but neglectful parenting style was one that was also mentioned in the book. So this is the parent that is not at all involved, hardly cares for their child, often leaves them to like fend for themselves. Like if, perhaps you'll see this in like families who like have extreme addiction problems, where like parents are out like on the street doing drugs perhaps, and then the children are left at home pretty much to fend for themselves. So as per the textbook, once again, this is opposite of authoritative, which is both demanding and responsive. This is neither demanding nor responsive, so it doesn't have the rules. There's no response to the child's needs. It's just the parents simply like not there pretty much. Oftentimes neglectful parents don't care really to become close to their children, and this often has like really bleak impacts on the child for the rest of their life, with social interactions. How can a child do academic? Because how can a child do well in school if they don't have a parent at home to support them, and even emotionally?
Yeah, I definitely feel for those people who have neglectful parenting style, because they will struggle in life. Just some other terms, how they relate to parenting styles and attachment. We have stranger anxiety. That's just the idea that in a situation where infants become anxious and fearful around strangers, they're not sure how to react. And then you also have contact comfort. That's the physical touch aspect, that infants need that physical touch to better have that relationship with their parents. And then the last one there is temperament, and that's just the aspects of personality, that we are born with. So they can be, relaxed, which is an easy temperament, or intense, irritable, which will be a difficult temperament. And then
and that often continues throughout life.
Exactly. And then to wrap up, we just have the external research that it can be incorporated, so how parenting and attachment styles interplay. So there was a study with 508 high school children aged 14 to 19, and the article states, the results showed that authoritative and permissive parenting styles were associated with secure attachment, whereas authoritarian and neglectful parenting styles were associated with insecure attachment. Insecure attachment was associated with a low level of self-regulation, whereas secure attachment was associated with a high level of self-regulation. Now remember, correlation is not causation. However, the authoritative and permissive parenting styles, that interests me, right? That the secure attachment related to the permissive, because when I think of permissive, I feel like there's less rules, so you would expect the adult later in life to not know what to do and not expect to be a secure attachment. And there's also another article there, Emma.
Yes, this article was talking on attachment and how this correlates with adult relationships. Mm-hmm. So pretty much the article just overviews secure versus insecure attachment and details how each type might show up in relationships, and provides tips for navigating relationships with each insecure attachment style. So overall, the article found that adults who formed secure attachments in childhood often felt more safe in adult relationships, and oftentimes these adults would be more ready to seek help when they needed from their partners, be more open and vulnerable in sharing things with their partners, and even more ready to like take responsibility for their actions when there were conflicts between the two of them. So, but oppositely, those who had one of the three insecure attachment styles, which remember, anxious, ambivalent, avoidant, and disorganized attachment, those children as adults may experience more troubles in their future relationships that align pretty much with what they experienced with their specific attachment style as children.
Yeah, that definitely interests me, and what even interests me more is how much we were able to learn, by researching this stuff. We were able to learn how there's all those styles and how they relate to later in life, and how basic, trust, sensitive period, critical periods are all important topics. And we hope we were able to teach you guys maybe some things on attachment theories and how they relate later in life. And we do appreciate everybody watching. Do you have any other words?
I do not. Do you?
All right, I don't.
Okay.
Again, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.